The air feels heavier as the melody creeps in, a sound that seems to slither through your mind, haunting and unforgettable. You know his name, Robert Kelly, the so-called king of R&B. His songs captivated the world, but the story behind the music is anything but harmony. At the heart of this tale lies Aaliyah, a rising star taken too soon. Her angelic voice and untouchable grace became the centerpiece of a tragedy that still echoes. But what if her death wasn't just an accident? What if it was something darker, something planned? What you're about to hear peels back the glittering surface of fame to reveal a chilling underbelly, a story of power, sacrifice, and a haunting melody that lured innocence to its doom. This is a journey into the shadows, where deals are made in secret and the cost is more than anyone can bear. I want to warn you, what you are about to hear is disturbing and may forever change how you look at the music industry. This is called the Pied Piper. The clang of steel doors slamming shut is a sound you never forget. For most, it signals captivity. For me, it was the sound of survival, a warning that you were on their turf now. Cook County Jail wasn't just a facility. It was a living thing. It breathed, creaked, and whispered in ways that crawled under your skin. The air felt heavier inside, as if the building itself carried the weight of countless untold stories. I never dreamed of working in a place like this. Hell, I didn't even want the job. But life doesn't always give you what you want. It hands you what you deserve, or what you can't avoid. My debts didn't care about my pride. Neither did my ex-wife, who was all too happy to take everything and leave me with the scraps of a life I barely recognized. The divorce hadn't just broken my bank account. It shattered any illusion I had of control. This job was supposed to be temporary, just a way to get back on my feet. That's what I told myself anyway. But the years slipped by and the routine became comforting. I knew where I stood here. Inmates were inmates. Guards were guards. The lines didn't blur. Until the night I was assigned to C-Wing. Cook County Jail had a soul, a blackened, rotting thing that pressed against the walls and seeped into the air. It wasn't just the peeling paint or the flickering lights. It was the history, the screams soaked into the stone, the lives that ended here, forgotten and unmourned. The whispers of those who'd walked these halls before me sometimes felt tangible, like invisible hands brushing against my skin. C-Wing was the heart of that darkness. It wasn't just a cell block. It was a cage for the worst of the worst. The men housed here weren't just criminals, they were predators, killers, rapists, men whose names carried weight on the streets and terror in the hearts of their victims. They weren't just serving time. They were etched into the walls, jail's malevolent tapestry. And now, among them, was Robert S. Kelly. When Kelly arrived, the atmosphere in C-Wing shifted. It was subtle at first, a heaviness in the air, like the weight of a storm you couldn't see yet. The inmates watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. They whispered his name in the same tone they reserved for legends. But there was something else, too. Resentment, maybe. Or awe. Don't let him get in your head. Officer Daniels warned me as we patrolled the wing. He's not like the others. What do you mean? I asked. Daniels hesitated, his eyes darting toward Kelly's cell. You'll see. Kelly's cell wasn't just another corner of the jail. It was a void, an anomaly, a space where the world didn't seem to work the way it should. Shadows clung to his cell like vines, thick and impenetrable. The air there wasn't just cold. It felt alive, heavy with an unnatural weight. As I approached, a chill traced the length of my spine. He was sitting on the edge of his cot, his back slightly hunched, the lines of his shoulders taut, like a predator lying in wait. At first, he looked ordinary, a man stripped of his fame, reduced to a hollow shell of what he once was. But when he turned his head to meet my gaze, the illusion shattered. His eyes weren't those of a broken man. They were sharp, calculating, and unsettlingly calm. "Officer Harris," he said, his voice dripping with an unnerving smoothness, like silk sliding over a blade. "You look tense." The sound of my name on his lips hit me like a jolt. I didn't answer. Instead, I gripped my baton tighter, willing my face to remain impassive. But he didn't need a response. His smirk said he already knew. "You like music, officer?" he asked, tilting his head slightly, his tone light, almost conversational. "Does it move you? Make you feel alive?" "Lights out," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. The smile on his face widened as he leaned back against the wall. "They sacrificed her, you know," he said almost casually. "Aaliyah. Blood for fame. Blood for power." Her name hit me like a punch to the gut. Everyone knew the whispers, the rumors that clung to Kelly's career like shadows. But hearing it spoken aloud, especially in that tone, made the room feel smaller. The air grew harder to breathe. You don't know what you're talking about, I said, my words coming out more defensive than I'd intended. His eyes gleamed as he chuckled softly, a sound utterly devoid of warmth. Oh, but I do. She wasn't just a girl. She was the key. The queen demanded her, and I gave her exactly what she needed. Something about the way he said it, the reverence in his voice paired with that sinister edge made my stomach churn. I wanted to demand more, to force him to explain what he meant. But part of me was afraid of the answer. That night, as the jail settled into an uneasy quiet, the humming started. It was faint at first, barely noticeable over the ambient noise of the facility, but it wasn't random. It had a rhythm, a cadence that wormed its way into your mind like a splinter. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but as the hours ticked by, the sound grew louder, weaving itself into the fabric of the night. By the time I made it back to Sea Wing, it was unmistakable. "Kelly!" I barked, standing outside his cell. "Cut it out!" He didn't answer. He just kept humming a low, eerie melody that seemed to vibrate through the walls themselves. It wasn't a tune I recognized, but there was something about it that felt ancient, primal, like it belonged to a time and place humanity had long since forgotten. Or maybe one we were never meant to know. "Kelly!" I shouted again. He only turned his head slightly, just enough for me to catch the edge of his smile. The other inmates started to complain. "That sound," one muttered, his voice shaking. "It's messing with my head. Make him stop." God knows I tried. Every order, every threat, every plea. Each one was met with the same mocking smirk and that infernal humming. It wasn't just disruptive. It was invasive. Even when I left the wing, I could still hear it faintly, as though it had burrowed into my brain and taken root. "Do you hear it?" One of the guards, Daniels, asked during shift change, his voice low and strained. He didn't wait for me to answer. "It's like it's alive, like it's in me." I nodded, unwilling to admit out loud that I knew exactly what he meant. Kelly's humming didn't just disrupt the jail's rhythm. It unraveled it. Sleep became impossible for both inmates and guards. Conversations grew tense. Movements turned jittery. It was as though the melody carried a weight, a presence that wrapped itself around you, dragging you deeper into its grip. And through it all, Kelly remained the same. Smiling, humming, watching. Always watching. Kelly's cell was cloaked in darkness, thicker than the rest of the wing. A void where even the faint glow of the overhead lights dared not penetrate. When his voice finally broke the silence, it was like a scalpel, sharp, deliberate, and meant to cut deep. "You think I killed her, don't you?" Kelly said, his tone laced with something I couldn't quite place. Mockery, regret, or maybe both. The words stopped me cold. My pulse quickened, my grip tightening around the baton at my side. "What?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted him to repeat it. "Aaliyah," he said, leaning forward so the dim light caught the sharp, almost predatory angles of his face. "You think I had something to do with her death?" The air between us felt charged, like static before a storm. I didn't respond, but the silence seemed to encourage him. "Let me tell you something," Kelly continued, his voice low and steady, like a hypnotist lulling someone into a trance. "I didn't kill her. I didn't force her onto that plane." He paused, but I didn't stop it either. "Why not?" I asked. My voice trembled despite my effort to keep it steady. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, but something stronger rooted me to the spot, forcing me to hear him out. Kelly's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes, they looked through me, cold, unblinking, as if they were drawing from some abyss I couldn't see because it wasn't my choice to make, he said almost lazily. "She wasn't mine. She was hers." "Whose?" I demanded, though my heart already knew the answer. The dread was building, coiling like a serpent in my gut. "The Queen," he said simply, the words falling from his lips like a dark hymn. "She called to her and Aaliyah answered. That's how it works. You don't fight it. You can't stop it. Once she's chosen, it's over." His words hit me like a punch to the chest, their weight sinking deep into my bones. I wanted to shout at him, to call him a liar. But something in his tone, steady, calm, almost reverent, made the denial catch in my throat. Kelly's recounting of the ritual came in fragmented pieces, each word heavier than the last. It wasn't a confession. It was an invocation, a glimpse into a dark world where the rules of our reality no longer applied. "The room," he began, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "It wasn't like anything you've ever seen. The air was thick, heavy, like you were breathing through water. And the shadows." He trailed off, his gaze growing distant. They didn't move like normal shadows, he continued. They twisted, writhed, as if they were alive. He paused, his fingers gripping the bars of his cell so tightly his knuckles turned white. There were candles, dozens of them. The light should have been warm, comforting. But it wasn't. It was cold, and the smell, sweet but wrong, like flowers rotting in a closed room. What was she doing there? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Aaliyah thought it was just another meeting, Kelly said flatly, as if reciting a fact rather than a memory. She thought we were there to talk about the next phase of her career. Another deal. Another opportunity. He swallowed. She didn't know. Not until it started. Until what started? I pressed, my stomach twisting with every word. Robert Kelly looked at me, his eyes hollow, as if he were staring through me into something I couldn't see. The shadows started moving, he said, his voice barely audible. Not just shifting, moving, wrapping around her, holding her in place. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. My breath caught in my throat. And then she came, Kelly said, his voice dropping to a whisper so soft I had to lean closer to hear him. The Queen? He shuddered, his entire body trembling. She wasn't fully formed. Not yet, but her presence... He trailed off. It was overwhelming. The air got heavier, like it was pressing down on us. And her eyes? He stopped. What about her eyes? I asked, my voice barely steady. Kelly swallowed hard, his gaze unfocused. They weren't human, he said finally. They weren't even alive. They were endless, like looking into the void. What did she do? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Kelly's lips trembled as he spoke. She smiled, he said, his voice almost a whimper. And Aaliyah was gone, body and soul, just gone. His words hung in the air like a curse, their weight pressing down on me. I wanted to call him a liar, to walk away and forget everything I just heard. But deep down, in the place where reason gives way to fear, I knew. Down, I couldn't. Because some part of me knew that he wasn't lying. Knew that what he'd seen, what he'd done, was real. What happened to her? I asked, my voice shaking. Kelly looked at me, his expression hollow and broken. She became part of her, he said simply. Part of the Queen. That's how it works. Once you're chosen, you're hers forever. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows around me darker as his words settled into the silence. Whatever this was, whatever had happened to Aaliyah, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Robert S. Kelly's words lingered in the cold air, their weight pressing against me like an unseen force. The thought of Aaliyah transformed, her essence entwined with this entity he called the Queen, gnawed at the edges of my mind. My chest felt tight, each breath a struggle against the mounting dread. What do you mean? A vessel? I managed to ask, though my voice was barely audible. Kelly's hollow laugh echoed off the concrete walls, sharp and biting. The Queen's vessel, he said, his tone laced with bitterness. She needed someone pure, someone radiant, someone untouchable in the eyes of the world. Aaliyah was all of that, and more. Her innocence, her fame, her beauty. It wasn't just what the Queen wanted. It was what she needed to ascend. The room seemed to grow darker, the flickering hallway light dimming as if reacting to his words. And Asmodeus, he continued, his voice lowering into a whisper. He was the bridge, the architect. Without him, it couldn't have happened. I swallowed hard, the weight of his confession settling into the pit of my stomach. Why her? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Kelly's eyes flashed with something that resembled anger, though it was dulled by despair. Because she was perfect, he said simply. Too perfect. That kind of light. It attracts them. The Queen saw her and knew she had to have her. That's how it works. The ones who shine the brightest fall the fastest. His voice broke as he continued, his body trembling with a volatile mixture of rage and sorrow. I gave them everything, he said, his fists clenching until his knuckles turned white. My music, my soul, my loyalty. I thought I was special, that I was chosen. But it was never about me. He shook his head, his face twisting with fury. They used me as a means. The Queen. They needed me to bring her to them. That was my purpose. Nothing more. His voice trailed off, and for a moment he was silent. What happened? I pressed, my heart pounding in my chest. Kelly looked up at me, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. They cast me aside, he said bitterly. Left me here to rot. Do you know what that feels like? To be discarded by the very forces you devoted your life to? To realize you were never more than a pawn in their game? He gestured around his cell, his voice rising with frustration. This isn't punishment. This is limbo. They didn't kill me because that would have been too merciful. They left me alive so I could see it, see what they took. see what they made of her, and know I was never truly part of it. Kelly's hands fell away from the bars, his shoulders slumping as a hollow laugh escaped his lips. But they didn't leave me with nothing, he said, his tone shifting to something darker, almost resigned. No, they left me with the hymns. He closed his eyes, his lips moving soundlessly for a moment. Then the humming began. It started low, barely audible, but it grew quickly, filling the space between us with its haunting melody. The sound wasn't just eerie. It was alive, twisting and turning in the air as if it had a will of its own. My skin prickled as it seemed to wrap itself around me, pulling me closer. They call me the Pied Piper, Robert Kelly said, his voice trembling with both bitterness and pride. Do you know why? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The sound was too overwhelming, too consuming. It's because I play their music, he continued, his voice growing softer. It's inside me now, always. I carry it with me. I spread it to whoever listens. He swallowed. That's my punishment. That's my purpose. I'm nothing now, just a vessel for the hymns, a broken instrument for them to use. He leaned back against the wall, his eyes closing as the humming grew louder, reverberating through the cell like a dirge. And the worst part, he said, his voice barely audible over the sound, is that I love it. The melody faded as Kelly opened his eyes, the faintest trace of a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The music isn't just sound, he murmured, his voice distant. It's alive. It crawls into you, through your ears, through your skin, until it owns you, until you can't tell where it ends and you begin. He turned his gaze to me, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes, something dark, something not human. I used to hate it, he said softly. The noise, the endless noise. But now, his voice trailed off as the smile widened. Now I understand. The music isn't a curse. It's a gift, a reminder of what they gave me, and what they took. It's the only thing I have left. I quit the next day. There was no point in explaining why. No one would have believed me. Hell, I wasn't even sure I believed myself. But I couldn't stay, not with the humming following me. Faint and persistent even when I was far from the jail. Even after I left, it didn't stop. It was always there, just at the edge of my hearing. I started noticing shadows where there shouldn't have been any. I felt the weight of eyes that weren't there. And then the dream started. Every night I saw her, the queen. Her crown burned with an unholy light, her silhouette flawless and terrifying, and standing beside her always was Asmodeus. His eyes burned like twin infernos, his voice echoing through the darkness as he called my name. You belong to me, she whispered in every dream. You always have.